It began as a quiet evening inspection inside Buckingham Palace. Yet in a forgotten corner of a queen's private suite, two senior royal officers froze in disbelief. There, wrapped in protective silk, hidden deep inside a wardrobe belonging to Queen Camilla, lay a relic no one expected to ever see again. The late Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown. Why was it here? Who hid it? And why would such a sacred symbol of the monarchy be tucked away from the world? What the officers uncovered next would shake the palace and reveal a secret no royal fan ever imagined. Before we dive deeper into this emotional royal mystery, tap like if you love true royal stories and subscribe so you never miss a moment from the palace gates to the royal heart. And hey, share this with another royal fan, because what we're about to uncover, well, it deserves to be seen. It began quietly, not with trumpets, not with royal announcements, but with something far more ordinary. A scheduled evening security inspection inside Buckingham Palace, the kind that had happened thousands of times before, the kind that usually passed without a whisper of interest. But history, as it often does, chose the ordinary moment to reveal the extraordinary. Two senior royal officers moved down a polished corridor, their footsteps softened by thick crimson carpet worn smooth by generations of royal footsteps. Portraits of monarchs stared down from the walls, some stern, some proud, some almost watchful, as though they were judging every soul that walked past. Tonight felt different, though neither officer said it aloud. Silence settled like velvet. The palace slept, yet memories lingered like dust particles in a ray of light. Queen Elizabeth's absence could still be felt. She had filled these halls for 7 decades, and even now in her absence it was as if her presence still walked beside every guard, every staff member, every visitor lucky enough to pass through the gilded gates. As the officers approached a small private suite, one seldom entered since her passing, they stopped. The room before them was one of the late Queen's private dressing chambers. During her life, the door rarely opened except for trusted hands. Since her death, it had remained a sealed memorial of sorts, a place frozen in time. One officer reached for the handle, then paused. It was unlocked. That alone was unusual. This door was always secured, checked twice, sometimes even 3 times. A small muscle in the officer's jaw tightened. He glanced at his partner. Not fear, not suspicion, but a quiet alertness. Certain doors in the palace didn't open without purpose. And this one? It held decades of royal secrets, fabrics, jewelry, and history that mattered more than gold. "Has someone been here today?" the younger officer whispered. "No record," the older replied. "But we have a duty." Duty. The word echoed as if the portraits agreed. The door opened gently, not with ghostly creaks nor dramatic slowness, but softly, respectfully, like they were stepping into a memory rather than a room. The air inside felt different, untouched still, as though time itself held its breath here. The faintest trace of lavender drifted in the air, the scent the late Queen loved, a perfume that now carried more emotion than fragrance. One officer swallowed, remembering a moment years earlier when he had seen her smile at him during a state procession. Small, dignified, kind. Memories are strange like that. They arrive without warning, and they can hit harder than sound. The room was neat. Everything in its place, as if she might walk back in any moment. Dresses protected in garment covers, shoes aligned with military precision, a small silk scarf draped across a vanity stool, as though left there just minutes ago. Nothing looked disturbed, and yet something felt wrong, or perhaps hidden. The younger officer moved slowly toward an elegant lacquered wardrobe tucked into a corner, one rarely opened after the official inventory of Her Majesty's belongings. It was not part of the usual sweep, but instinct and training nudged him forward. A small brass key sat in the lock. That key did not belong there. Their breaths tightened. With slow hands, they opened the wardrobe doors. And there, wrapped in protective silk cloth like a secret wrapped in moonlight, rested the gown. Not just any gown. The gown. Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown. Pearls, crystals, gold thread, symbols of nations stitched by history itself. A garment that didn't just mark a day, it marked the beginning of a reign, a life of duty, and a bond with millions.
Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown, pearls, crystals, gold thread, symbols of nations stitched by history itself. A garment that didn't just mark a day, it marked the beginning of a reign, a life of duty, and a bond with millions. For a heartbeat, neither man moved. Shock blurred into awe. Awe softened into emotion. Emotion, surprisingly, unexpectedly, bloomed into quiet sorrow. The older officer's eyes glistened. He blinked hard, because royal guards do not cry easily, but this was not a uniform he wore. This was a life he had served. "It shouldn't be here," he murmured, voice low, almost reverent. The gown belonged in royal archives, preserved on a controlled light, handled by gloved experts, not sitting in the private wardrobe with a new queen consort. But here it was, tucked behind two plain garments of Camilla's, hidden, but not hidden well enough, as if someone placed it there quietly, not to steal, not to disrespect, but almost as if they didn't know where else to put it, or didn't want anyone else to see. The younger guard felt a ripple of emotion he didn't expect, not anger, but melancholy. He had never met the late queen personally, but like millions, he felt like he had. She was a symbol of steadiness, of history, of home, whether one loved the monarchy or questioned it. The queen had become part of the nation's heartbeat, and here was the gown that crowned her, concealed like a forgotten treasure. The officers exchanged a look, not accusation, not panic, but confusion mixed with reverence. "Do we report it?" the younger asked. "We must," the elder replied. "But carefully, this is not just fabric." And for a long moment, they simply stood there, two men in uniform, not as security officers, but as witnesses to history. A history that didn't belong to them, yet a history they had sworn to protect. Everything about this discovery felt delicate, emotionally, politically, symbolically. If this became public in the wrong way, headlines would erupt, questions would roar, allegations, theories, royal critics. The fire would spread fast. Yet another thought flickered quietly beneath the noise. Why was it here? Who placed it? And was it really what it seemed, or was this part of a story no one yet understood? Before leaving, the elder guard gently closed the wardrobe, as if tucking a memory back into its case. Not out of secrecy, but out of respect. Because some moments don't need volume. They just need care. As they stepped out and locked the chamber again, the palace corridor felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just heavier. As if the walls themselves whispered a warning. Not everything hidden is meant to be hidden forever. And not every royal secret is what the world imagines it to be. Sometimes the truth is far softer and far sadder. Sometimes secrets aren't about scandal, but about love, loss, and longing for those who came before. It is hard to describe a dress without describing the world that breathed around it. Because Queen Elizabeth II's coronation gown wasn't simply worn. It was lived in, prayed over, and remembered by millions long before it ever returned to a wardrobe. To understand its weight, you must picture the time. Britain was rebuilding. Streets still carried scars of war. Cracked stone, hollowed homes, quiet grief tucked behind drawn curtains. And yet in June 1953, something stirred inside the nation like spring beneath snow. People polished shoes not for comfort, but for pride. Children practiced curtsies in tiny mirrors. The elderly, some who had seen 2 coronations already, pinned medals to jackets with trembling fingers. And at the center of all this gentle anticipation was a young woman whose life changed faster than she could catch her breath. Elizabeth, just 25, still learning how to be wife and mother, yet chosen to wear responsibility as heavy as any crown. Her father had passed unexpectedly. Her childhood ended in a moment. Destiny is ruthless like that. It does not knock. It simply arrives. But she didn't falter. She stood in Westminster Abbey clothed in silk, symbols and history, and the world believed again. You could see in the way crowds leaned closer to tiny television screens, in the hush that swept across living rooms, in the way every heart seemed to beat in the same slow rhythm as she took her oath. The camera moved in grainy whispers. The moment felt almost holy. And then there was the gown itself. shimmering yet humble, rich yet meaningful. Every thread told a story. Every bead represented a nation, a hope, a generation waiting to be led with steadiness. It was designed to be timeless, and it was, even decades later, it glowed with the same dignity it held on that first day. So when two modern-day royal officers discovered it, not in a museum, not in a sealed vault, but tucked quietly in a private wardrobe belonging to Queen Camilla, the air felt different. Not scandalous, deeper than that. People assume royal life is all ceremony and intention, but some moments are softer, more fragile, more human than headlines allow. The two men didn't see fabric. They saw ghosts of applause, whispers of prayers, echoes of a young queen promising her life in silence and sincerity. They didn't speak at first, because how do you speak in the presence of something sacred? And instantly, a simple, human question flickered in the mind of one officer. Why would Camilla have it? It could have been a mistake, an archivist moving items, a temporary storage, a transition still unfolding behind palace walls after the late queen's passing. Or it could have been private. Sentiment lives quietly in royal families. What the world sees as politics, they often feel as memory. The late queen and Camilla shared decades of complicated history. Duty, distance, gradual warmth, mutual respect shaped not by ceremony but by time. What if the gown wasn't hidden out of secrecy, but out of emotion? Sometimes people hold on to objects not because they want to keep them, but because letting go feels like saying goodbye twice. Still, the officers had responsibilities, protocol, duty thicker than emotion. The elder one closed the wardrobe gently, not to erase the moment, but to seal it like a memory inside a book. He didn't need to say it. The younger understood. This wasn't a moment to rush, or judge, or panic. This discovery required dignity, not drama. People will not understand, the younger murmured under his breath, unsure why he felt protective. People rarely do, the elder answered softly, because outside palace gates, history is entertainment. Inside them, history is personal. They exited the chamber carefully, locking it with quiet reverence. No alarms, no accusations, just two breaths held in the stillness of royal corridors. And when they stepped back into Marble Hall, the palace felt heavier, not dark, just weighted with the delicate reality that legacies are carried not only by documents and statues, but by hearts. If you listen closely, you could almost hear the past breathing, not haunting, reminding. The coronation gown had once symbolized a promise to millions. Now, in its unexpected resting place, it felt like a whisper continuity, from one queen to the next, from duty fulfilled to duty inherited. But whispers always raise questions. Was its placement intentional? Was someone meaning to honor the late queen quietly? Or had an archivist simply set aside temporarily, unaware that sentiment would be mistaken for secrecy? A kingdom may adore pageantry, but within the walls of Buckingham Palace, the human heart beats quietly. Sometimes love hides not in public tributes, but in private corners. Somewhere inside the palace that night, a clock chimed, not loudly, just a soft reminder that time moves forward even when emotion lingers behind. The officers exchanged a final look, not of fear, but of understanding. Their night was no longer ordinary. Their discovery would not stay silent for long. Royal history rarely does. And somewhere, perhaps in another room, perhaps behind a closed door, someone else in the palace might have already known this moment would come. Because when you guard tradition, you also guard transition. And transition in royal life is never simple. This wasn't just a dress being found. It was legacy rediscovered, memory uncovered, a thread pulled gently between the reign of a legend and the reign that followed. A gown once illuminated by cameras and choirs had now been discovered in silence. And sometimes quiet discoveries speak loudest. The story hadn't yet unfolded. The truth was waiting. But one thing was certain. When an object holds history, emotion always follows. And in the palace that night, the past did not feel gone. It felt close, present, watching, waiting to be understood. Rumors inside a palace don't shout. They breathe. They move like drafts through old corridors, brushing past tapestries, full of meaning yet never seen. And after the officers closed that wardrobe door, a subtle ripple passed through Buckingham Palace. Quiet, contained, but undeniable. The late Queen's coronation gown had been found, placed in a wardrobe that wasn't hers. And the name tied to that wardrobe, the woman who now held the title Queen Consort, carried a lifetime of public emotion, fascination, misunderstanding, and slow-earned respect. Camilla, to the world, she is many things. To history, she will be even more. But inside the palace, she is not a headline. She is a human being living under the shadow of a woman who defined duty for a century. That shadow is not cruel. It isn't competition. It is simply weight, heavy, silent, ever-present. Camilla has known the feeling of rooms watching her for decades, of whispers trailing her footsteps, of loyalty earned slowly, painfully, step by step. So perhaps it made sense, more than the world might ever admit, that certain memories of the late Queen touched her more deeply than any speech could show. Because while the newspapers once painted rivalry, the truth inside palace walls was gentler, quieter. Not friendship, not warmth in the traditional sense, but respect. Age softens edges. Duty shapes perspective. And grief binds strangers in ways the public never sees. And now, the coronation gown sat in her private wardrobe, not displayed, not boasted about, tucked away, like something cherished or protected. But perception is a fragile thing. Outside the palace, one wrong photograph could twist sentiment into scandal. Headlines don't ask for context. They ask for drama. Why does Camilla have it? The question alone would ignite millions. Inside, though, the truth often grows in silence. Camilla sat in her sitting room that evening, a fire crackling softly, a single lamp glowing beside her. Papers rested untouched on the table, a teacup cooling by her hand. Her expression was thoughtful, distant. She was not the powerful queen consort in this moment. She was a woman remembering a life she never expected to live. It is easy to forget she did not ask for destiny. It arrived decades after she accepted a quieter fate. She had known life in the background, known public disapproval like a storm without shelter, known eyes that measured without mercy. And she had learned to endure quietly, not by forcing admiration, but by simply showing up day after day, even when history doubted her place in it. The coronation gown, she had requested to see it. Not to wear, not to touch, not a display, but simply to feel close, for just a moment, to the legacy she now inherited. To understand, perhaps in a whisper rather than parade, the weight of the crown she now supported beside a king she had loved long before he was allowed to love her publicly. Archival staff had brought it to her, carefully, reverently, assuming she wished to view it briefly before it returned to secure storage. But time slipped. Grief does that. Sometimes it lingers in fabrics more than photographs. Sometimes one means to let go, yet cannot bring themselves to do it that day or the next. Her intention was not secrecy. It was sentiment. And sentiment is not a headline. It is a heartbeat. But no explanation would come yet. Camilla did not rush to defend or clarify, not out of guilt, but because learning to rush is a habit she never formed. Some people shout their innocence. She has always believed dignity speaks quieter. Meanwhile, uncertainty moved through the palace staff like a draft beneath a door. Not panic, just quiet questions. Archivists double-checked lists. Aides whispered, careful not to raise alarm. The discovery wasn't public. Not yet. And there was a silent hope it would never be. After all, the monarchy survives not only on transparency, but on grace. Late that night, King Charles returned to his residence, weary from engagements that demanded more than his strength sometimes allowed. His face showed age where once it showed duty alone, and grief where once it showed certainty. He removed his jacket slowly, sat beside Camilla with the heaviness of a man who carries generations on his shoulders. He did not ask what troubled her. He simply knew. "You're thinking of her again," he said softly. Camilla's eyes glimmered not with tears, but with a feeling older and quieter, reflection. "She carried it all with such grace," she whispered, almost in awe, almost in sorrow. "And now everything feels enormous." Charles reached for her hand, not with royal formality, but with the tenderness of a man who had waited a lifetime to hold it freely. "You don't have to be her," he said. No one could. Camilla nodded gently. "I don't want to be her. I just want to honor her." The gown lingered in her thoughts like a hymn, a piece of history she had stepped near, not to claim, but to understand, to touch legacy not through silk, but through humility, and beyond their private warmth. The palace remained still, an old world holding its breath in the space between monarchs. Because transition is never one moment. It is thousands of quiet realizations, thousands of invisible handoffs between eras, thousands of objects, gowns, letters, diaries, crowns, passing silently from memory into responsibility. And in that stillness, the truth became clear. The gown was not hidden out of pride, nor out of disrespect. It rested where it did because grief is complicated, legacy is delicate, and love, even royal love, does not always follow protocol. Camilla did not want to own the past. She wanted to honor it, even if she didn't yet know how to let it go. Outside, London slept beneath its blanket of history. Double-decker buses idle, palace guards steadying the cold, the Thames moving quietly under streetlights. Life continued, unaware that inside the walls of monarchy, a single dress had stirred questions larger than silk. A dress once worn by a queen who symbolized endurance, now watched quietly by a queen learning, slowly, painfully, how to carry a kingdom's expectations without losing the self she fought to be. And sometimes, in the halls of power, the most powerful truth is not spoken aloud. Even queens feel unprepared sometimes. Even queens need time to breathe. Even queens carry shadows, not of guilt, but of history. And every shadow exists only because there is light. Morning sunlight touched the palace like a gentle blessing, turning stone and steel into gold. Yet inside, hearts beat fast, because today, truth would either set history free or bury secrets deeper than crowns. Princess Catherine stood near a tall window, hands clasped tightly. She had barely slept. The late Queen's diary still rested in William's hands, its velvet cover carrying more weight than jewels. Charlotte, blissfully unaware of the storm, hummed softly in the corner, building a castle from toy blocks, a castle that needed no crown to shine. William approached Catherine quietly, brushing a hand over her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he whispered. She nodded, not because fear was gone, but because courage had taken its place. A room of truth. The private council chamber was quiet when they entered. Oak walls, tall windows, and portraits of monarchs who once faced storms of their own. King Charles rose from his seat, hands resting on his cane, face stern yet unreadable. Queen Camilla sat beside him, lips pursed, fingers pressed together, silence stretched. Every breath felt like ceremony. William placed the diary gently on the polished table, sliding it to his father. "You need to read this," he said, voice steady, but eyes shining with emotion. Charles looked down, and for a long moment, the room forgot how to breathe. He opened the diary, and there, in the late Queen's soft handwriting, lay truth wrapped in love, not law. "She deserves wings, not rules. The world should see what I saw. A heart that will guide, not guard." Another line. "One day, the crown must recognize spirit, not tradition. And Charlotte, she will be more than anyone expects." Charles swallowed hard. Catherine blinked back tears. Even Camilla's eyes flickered with unease. The room trembled not with noise, but with meaning. Camilla speaks. Camilla leaned forward at last. "So this is about a title?" she asked, voice cool. Catherine lifted her chin gently. "It's not about a title. It's about respect, about truth, about stopping a child from inheriting a burden she did not create." Her voice shook, not from weakness but from love. William added softly, "We are not challenging you. We are asking you to honor her." Camilla's eyes narrowed, old thoughts battling modern reality. And what if honoring her means chaos? Public confusion? Tradition uprooted? Charles finally lifted his head, and what showed in his eyes was not a king, but a father, a grandfather, and a man suddenly stripped of armor. "Tradition survives," he murmured, "but love is what makes it worth carrying." Catherine's breath trembled. William squeezed her hand, not as a prince, but as a man standing beside the woman he loves. Charlotte, unaware but radiant, wandered over and gently placed a flower from her toy garden onto the table, right atop the diary. A tiny, innocent act, but it felt like destiny. The room softened. Even Camilla had no argument for innocence. The moment, Charles rose slowly. "We will not change titles today," he said, voice careful, kingly measured. "But the record will reflect her worth. The story will be remembered. And when time comes to pass the crown forward," he looked directly at Charlotte, kindness breaking through years of royal training, "we will remember who she is, not just where she stands." Catherine exhaled shakily, relief pouring like sunlight through storm clouds. William whispered, "Thank you, Pa." Not formal, not royal, just real. Camilla nodded once, acceptance reluctant but real. Even she could not deny the power of truth written by a queen loved around the world. And as the diary closed, the palace did not feel like a fortress, but a home holding a promise. The family moment. When the doors opened again, they didn't leave as royals in ceremony, but as a family healing old echoes. Charlotte took her parents' hands. "Did I do good?" she asked, eyes shining like tiny stars. Catherine kissed her forehead. "You did perfect, my love." William lifted Charlotte into his arms, a prince holding the future, gently. "You don't need a title to be important," he murmured. "You were born enough." Charlotte smiled. Innocent, powerful, the kind of power queens dream of. Heart, not crown, a final symbol. Later, alone, Catherine returned to the wardrobe. She touched the queen's brooch, the one little Charlotte adored. A tear fell, but it wasn't sorrow. It was gratitude, hope, strength. She whispered softly, "Thank you for believing in her. I will protect her dream, just as you wished." And in the quiet stillness, it felt as if the palace exhaled, a legacy not hidden, but passed on. The throne room stood silent, but hearts, they thundered with new beginnings. Because greatness is not inherited, it is chosen, and Charlotte would grow knowing she was never meant to fit a crown, but to rise beyond it. Dear royal family supporters, this story isn't just about palaces and crowns. It's about every child who ever felt limited, and every parent who quietly fights for their dream. Princess Charlotte, like every little girl, deserves a world that sees her heart before her title. If you believe in compassion over tradition, in love over rules, in a future where children choose their own destiny, speech balloon drop a heart-red heart and say, every child deserves a crown of their own making. Your voice matters. Your empathy builds tomorrow. And together, we honor true royalty, kindness, courage, and truth.